Hi everyone. I'll be talking about how Ember is like more than the sum of its parts, because Ember is the framework, but it's also much more like the community, the ecosystem, etc. First, a little bit about me. My name is Ricardo Mendes, but as Jamie mentions, you probably have seen me around the internet or Slack as Lox. I'm like a junior core team member, and I'm also on the learning team as one of the founders. And I'm currently working at TalkDesk. We're building next generation call center software, and come see me if you want some stickers or if you're curious about that. As a junior member of the core team, I also want to thank Tilda and the rest of the core team and the community for the support, and thank you all for being here. It brings me a lot of joy to speak with every one of you and to be able to contribute so much back. Okay, so this presentation isn't necessarily anything new, but the idea is to reinforce a bit some of the values of Ember and some of the message from Ember itself, the project, as well as some of the community. And if towards the end of the presentation you feel like this is a hidden recruitment presentation for the learning team, you're not wrong. So speaking of the learning team, first of all, I have some announcements, two very exciting things for the learning team. The first of which is we have two new learning team members, and I'd officially want to welcome Siva Kumar and Terence Lee. So as will be kind of the theme of the presentation, infrastructure is not usually something that people consider when they want to contribute to open source. But if you don't pay attention to infrastructure, you start getting bit rot, and then the website is hard to deploy. At the moment we have some issues, since we use Middleman, which is a Ruby project, people that want to contribute to the Ember website have some difficulties because it uses native extensions, and that's sometimes a problem. So Siva and Terence have been instrumental in helping us move our assets to Heroku. And we're standardizing, so we have CI, we have review apps for everything, which makes it really nice because you can make a pull request, for example, to the guides, and instead of us asking you to, oh, please take a screenshot of the before and after so you can see the impact, you get a little link, you click there, okay, I can see the change, it looks good. You merge and it gets automatically deployed, and you don't even have to think about it. So as maintainers and as contributors, the work that they've been doing with us has been very, very nice. So until very, very recently, if you went to the /API URL on the website, you'd get this old and busted design, and people used to ask, even today someone asked, okay, this is fine and well, but how do I see older versions of Ember, because I'm not on 2.12 yet, I'm not on the latest. So I'm happy to announce if you refresh the page, you get the new Ember API docs. This has been based on work by Stanley. I think there was a presentation by David and Todd and two other learning team members, and they've been working very hard on this for the last year. and we're finally happy to publish. It's not finished yet, and that's one thing where all of you will be able to help me. For example, the search isn't there yet. Michael, who's right there, is working on it. So this week that should land, but then we have service workers not working because it's like because of the URL or something. Todd and David can explain it better. And also responsive design is a goal for version 2, as well as adding more to projects. So you can see here that we have Ember and Ember data. The goal is to have like Ember CLI and other considered core libraries added to here. So to contextualize the rest of the talk a little bit, I want to talk about the core values of Ember. And to talk about that, I want to first mention this is the GitHub sponsored open source survey that surveyed like a bunch of open source contributors and projects and etc. using GitHub data. And I was listening to the changelog one of these days, and they had the people responsible for this project, and one of the comments was, oh, people usually put documentation as their main concern, and that was validated because it says right here, documentation is highly valued, frequently overlooked, and a means for establishing inclusive and accessible communities. But even so, projects don't usually value it. And a couple of years back in Ember's life, this was one like recurring complaint. That's why we formed the learning team to help address this problem. So we've been trying to clean up the guides, provide more documentation, and also the API docs. And for example, the RFC process, which is the process by which new features are introduced to Ember and also deprecated. There's a mandatory how do we teach this section, which is meant to like preliminarily come up with documentation for both the deprecation and the new feature, like how are we going to address this, who are the people that this affects. One of the reasons we were able to do this is because the people behind the Ember project believe that like all contributions are created equally, basically. It's not code is king, and if you don't submit code patches, you're not one of us, and I'm an example of that. I remember one commit that I've made to Ember, which was to enable child routes to inherit the parents model, because only resources used to do that, for those who remember. And I think that's basically my only actual code contribution. Everything I've done is around that, guides, learning, and some projects that I'll mention afterwards. But we don't actually stick to that. We're very ambitious, both in a framework sense and also in a developer experience sense. So I was doing some research for this presentation, and I came upon a blog post from 2013 that kind of said some of the things that I wanted to say. So the learning team initially was focused on improving the documentation, specifically the guides, but then our scope grew as we were able to focus on higher and higher levels of abstraction, let's say. So we've been trying to do projects beyond that. This post mentions specifically Ember CLI because if you've used Ember, especially if you've used to use Ember before Ember CLI, you'll know how much of a pain it was and like how easy it is to just Ember install, for example, Ember install service worker, Ember install 2 more add-ons, and you have a PWA. That's something that's only possible through the core values of let's make it easy for everyone. Because if we make it easier for the beginners and we make the developers not have to worry about like the tiny paper cuts, then even the experts can benefit from that. So I've mentioned both on the documentation scope and then on the framework scope, but this also extends to the community scope. Matthew, who was the keynote earlier, has a really nice blog post about being the bark. So in this metaphor, Ember is at the center. It's like the core, and then you have everything around it. And this also comes from the core values of Ember, because one of our goals is to provide you with the APIs so you can do everything using only public APIs and you don't need to go through like Ember itself. This was kind of an example with engines and fastboot. We did have to ship some code into Ember because we didn't have the APIs, but that's a great way like to find out what's missing. You have an idea, you try to implement it as an add-on, and many RFCs are done like that, or the other way around. For example, the recently enabled router service on 2.15 beta, I think. You say, oh, okay, this is very nice, and I've been waiting for this. How do I use this in earlier versions of Ember? Rob wrote a polyfill. That's more or less what we mean by be the bark. Like, you can build on top of Ember and do your own thing, and by doing that, you improve both the community for having your solution wherever it is available, like Ember Data or Liquidfire or Ember Power Select, for example, and also improve Ember because you'll force us to think about which APIs are missing. So I'll talk a little bit about the Ember universe of things. So we have the core experience. This is slightly arbitrary, like the separations, and it's not like the official stance or anything. It's more like how I try to structure the things to make it easier to make sense. So at the center, you have Ember, Ember CLI, and Ember Data. Like Ember CLI is instrumental. It's how you create and manage and build your projects. Ember, of course, and then Ember Data comes by default, and it's our solution for data handling. Then you have the extended experience. I've put here some of what I call like second-party add-ons, which are, they're not special. They just, like these, I think, have garnered more users than the others. Like they proved themselves and validated themselves. Some of them, I don't know if any of these specific ones are included by default, but some of them might, like Ember CLI Mirage, typo, or something like that. But I probably half the room uses Ember CLI deploy, and I know that Ember concurrency is very popular nowadays. But then you have the whole enchilada experience, which is, you can see like an explosion of things. I purposefully put everything I could remember. So on top of the add-ons, you have like Ember Observer, Weekly, the Stack Overflow and Slack, meetups and conferences, which are like the same kind of thing, and then screencasts, books, learning stuff, etc. Actually, EmberCamp's own Jamie, who's right there, did a presentation in April, recapping EmberConf, and he has like this huge mind map, and actually those 3 dots there expand to even more things. And this was like a great way to get a feel for like the geography and all the things that are happening. So I've talked a little bit about this. Let's try to sort of categorize. You have code contributions. They can be to the framework itself, either Ember or Glimmer VM. I mean, there's a lot of things. To applications, and here by applications, I mean more Ember applications in the wild. For example, our builds page is an Ember app, that sort of thing. The Ember API docs is an Ember app, and you can contribute to that, and then add-ons. And then we have the support category with infrastructure, managing our websites, deploy pipelines. Travis CI makes this easier, for example, and now Heroku CI also has that. And since they're open source friendly, we use that. Documentation, and documentation here, I meant it wider than just guides, for example. It's API docs, it's add-on documentation, it's blog posts, it's like screencasts, etc. Then you have outreach. Outreach is trying to reach outside of our community. So events, you have the conferences like EmberCamp, EmberConf, EmberFest, but then we should try to go to other conferences and like preach our word. And then collaborations. One example of what I mean by collaborations is that Crates.io, which is the website for the Rust programming language package manager, is an Ember app. And since it's open source, me, Tobias, and Siva have been trying to upgrade it because they don't have really an Ember person in the team. So we've been trying to update it, update the patterns, and that way everyone comes out of it looking good because they'll have a nice app, they'll have fast boot, it'll be fast, we'll fix a bunch of problems, and we'll be happy to have like an out in the wild open source Ember demo. And then you have developer experience. You have tool integrations, the browsers, for example, Ember Inspector, the thing that was recently released that tags. It's a formatter for the console that like formats Ember code to display nicely. There's editors like snippets, IntelliSense like IntelliJ Ember and VSC Ember, which is based on Ember language server. And then debugging, this is like Ember CLI add-ons or Ember Inspector once again. Introspection is kind of the same thing. And then prototyping is like Ember Twiddle, which allows you to quickly build up a demo thing. So, road ahead. There's a lot of stuff here. What can you help with? And this has been an area where we haven't been that good with communicating, like what we need, what's happening, and that's gonna hopefully change soon. For code, we've managed, like there's the famous Quest issues by Godfrey Chan. I don't remember now the specific thing, but they worked. I think it was for the Glimmer, for porting Glimmer tests. So I'm from the learning team. So from the learning team's perspective, what's happening? What can you help with? First, we have the website. We have a newish Learn section on the website. And the idea is for the Learn page to be the hub for documentation. So some of the things that we are working on is restructuring the guides to make it easier for you to figure out where the information you need is, because it's kind of mixed at the moment. The tutorials, at the moment, the learning team considers that there are two tutorials, which is the Quick Start and the Super Rentals, which is the just named tutorial in the guides. But we want to extract that to its own page, make it clear that they're tutorials, because that enables different, we don't have to update with every single version or something like that. And we want to introduce an intermediate tutorial. There's workshops. We want to provide material for you to do your own workshops. One idea is to work with existing workshops like Emberitas. They have an open source curriculum. We can provide support and try to come to something that we can say, okay, this follows best practices. Examples, at the moment it's called Showcase, but we're going to make it a standalone page and put examples of open source web apps that you can look at that are maintained by us, mostly, because that way we can also ensure that the patterns you see should be something that you're going to use and should use. There's still some work to do here, because, for example, the builds page was quite old because it was an embedded app before EmberCLI. It was just globals in the HTML file. And so there's some tests missing, etc. Okay, accidentally have tutorials again, so let's skip. Also on the website, but outside of the Learn page, we have the Ember API docs. I've already talked about them. There's still work to do. There's we released version 1.0, but we want the search. Should happen this week, we'll see. And then some minor details, and then mobile-ready PWA style of application for version 2. This is kind of arbitrary because we'll just keep updating it. There's also some design work going on. The color scheme for the entire web page and associated web pages like embercli.com, emberengines.com, emberfastboot.com. We're working on bringing everything together and making it accessible. Because one of the problems with the current website is that sometimes the colors aren't really accessible. And we're working to improve that. And also there's a project called Glimmer Style Guide. This is actually for the Ember website. If you've been to the Ember website in the last 2 weeks, you'll notice that if you're on a slow connection, you might notice that the header pops in. It's not there at first. That's because it's a Glimmer component. We're trying things out. We're trying to build a UI library that way. Build/releases, like I said, the Builds app is a little bit old. We're thinking about a new page to replace it, which has much more rich information about each release, and that you can just, for example, scroll through releases instead of going to the blog part, load more, and try to figure out the version, or just try to find it via Google. And then there's the dashboard. There's a dashboard at the moment in the website if you go to /dashboard, but the problem is that it's not really updated. And that's, again, one of the problems with communication from us, but we're also working on improving that, and we've been having some headway towards the new dashboard. Oops. Sorry. And also for developer experience, this is, some of these are not, maybe not exactly learning team, but like learning team adjacent. We have Ember Earth, which is Ember CLI, but in a GUI, like a graphical interface. I've mentioned this on my last talk. It's almost ready, like V1 is almost ready to ship. We have some slightly minor problems, and we want to make sure like we have multi-platform builds so people can Mac, Windows, and Linux can just download it. So if you can help with that, it would be great, because Ember Electron kind of does my head in. Ember CLI add-on docs. This is a project by Dan Freeman, myself, and Sam Selikov from EmberMap. It's to document your add-ons. So you run a command and you get version guides for your add-on, a landing page, and versioned API docs, as well as some components, for example, for live demos. For example, you might have seen EmberMap or Ember Parse Select. We want to make that easy for you. Ember Language Server is a language server protocol implementation. If you can help with that, you'll know what it is. So it's like self-selecting. So please contact us at topic editors, I think, in the Slack group. Then there's Help Wanted. That's a dashboard for things that we want help with, and especially like beginner friendly. That's also in the works. We'll have some progress soon from, I think it's the ember.js Bangalore meetup, because Siva runs that and is going to do that at the meetup. Then there's the core dashboard, which is to help the core team like with repetitive tasks, like coming up with the release blog post. We have a format with checklists, and instead of copy-pasting, we just press a button, and it deploys, it sends a PR, and we don't have to worry about it. Rusty Dashboard is like the same principle, but for the Rust teams, and we want to steal that technology. And then we have the Ember.js Times, which is a newsletter. The idea is for it to be weekly, and to be like small development updates on Ember. So it's a complement for Ember Weekly, which is more like not the framework itself, but I need help with that. So on the general Ember ecosystem, you have Ember.js. You can help implement RFCs or fix bugs. You can try beta and canary branches. That's very important. Develop add-ons, either new stuff, Ember-specific stuff, or wrapping existing APIs. I found one very cool that's like a windowing system. If you can wrap that, that would be cool for like Ember Twiddle or something. So cleanup, bug fixes, outreach. I mentioned Crates.io, meetups, workshops. Marketing is something that we also historically didn't have, and we're like having a serious effort at it. You can talk with Eric, who's right there, about it. He'll be happy to. And then we have also developer experience, text editor integrations, like porting the Ember language server client to other editors, and snippets and etc. Try to find a way for the different editors to share the snippets. And then we have Ember Inspector, which needs some updating as well, some cleanup, Glimmer support, as well as Ember Twiddle, which would be nice to have Glimmer support, even though there's a Glimmer Playground by Tom Dale. If you haven't seen that, go to his Twitter account, twitter.com/TomDale, and you'll see it. And also there's a redesign in progress for Ember Twiddle, which is very nice. And with that, obrigado. Thank you.